Hello, Dr. Joe here of the drjoe.com and the 2020from.com. So, what have I got for you here today? Well, I've got bread. Yes, bread. Arguably one of the world's most popular foods. It's eaten all over the world, from the east to the west, from the north to the south. I think bread is consumed in probably every country that I can think of. I may be wrong, but I suspect that what I've just said is true in terms of popularity. Bread is on par with foods such as rice and potatoes. The problem, though, is that bread has the potential to cause us metabolic problems. And that's because of the fact that, for the most part, bread is made from wheat flour, which is refined, and the bread manufacturers invariably tend to add sugar to give it a bit of taste, otherwise it will taste bland. And of course they add salt as well. And what that means is the fact that it's made from refined flour as well as sugar being added means it has the potential to spike our blood sugar levels, in particular white bread. Even the wholemeal bread still has the potential to spike us as well. So the question then arises as to whether there's a safer way of eating it without having to deal with the blood sugar problems that it can cause. And that is the subject of today's video. I'm going to share with you a little trick that you can employ to reduce the blood sugar spikes and of course the insulin spikes by 40%. Yes, that's what I want to share with you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. So we're going to be looking at bread and how we can eat bread without causing metabolic disturbance to our body. And we're going to be looking at that through the lens of a study whose aim was to investigate the impact of freezing and toasting on the glycemic response of white bread. White bread being the worst of the breads, and let's see how it's going to perform. The study researchers recruited 3 men and 7 women, so it wasn't a huge study, but the findings are very important all the same. The participants were aged between 22 to 59 years of age, and they made them to eat homemade white bread. And they made them to eat randomly the bread in 4 different formats. So the first format was fresh, and the second format was defrosting the bread after it's been frozen, and the third format being toasted from fresh, and the fourth format being freezing the bread, defrosting it, and then toasting it subsequently. So those are the 4 different formats that were randomly offered to the study participants. And the way they assessed the performance of each of those bread formats was through a 2-hour incremental area under the glucose response curve. And the idea behind that was to see how the blood sugar rises over the 2 hours before it begins to decline. So what were the results? Now I'm going to give the results from the worst performer to the best performer. So in 4th place was the fresh homemade bread, and that gave a glucose area under the curve of 259 millimole minutes per liter. So it was the worst performer. And in 3rd place was when the bread was toasted from fresh, and that gave a glucose response area under the curve of 193 millimole minutes per liter. So that was in 3rd place. And in 2nd place was when the bread was frozen and then defrosted and then eaten after it's been defrosted. And that gave a glucose response area under the curve of 179 millimole minutes per liter. So that was in 2nd place. And in 1st place, drumroll, was when the bread was frozen, defrosted, and then subsequently toasted. That gave a glucose response area under the curve of 157 millimole minutes per liter. It was the overall best performer, and we like that. This is the study. It was published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition with the title, The Impact of Freezing and Toasting on the Glycemic Response of White Bread. So just like in the other video where I talked about the things you can do to make things like rice and pasta a lot more blood sugar friendly. The same thing applies here to this bread, because when you freeze the bread, you are rearranging the molecules of the starch, and then of course when you defrost it, there's further rearrangement, and then if you toast it after defrosting it, then you have even further rearrangement of the starch molecules, and the net result of all of that is that you increase the resistant starch component of this very bread, and that's why you can eat the bread and you're going to have lesser blood sugar spikes, and of course lesser insulin spikes as well. So it's a very nice trick that you can employ to eat your bread a lot more safely, because if you increase the resistant starch component of the bread, then what that means is the resistant starch content is food for your gut bacteria, because resistant starch is indigestible. So that goes through you and then that feeds your gut friendly bacteria. And that also means that you have less calories coming from the rest of the starch, and that's the reason why you have less rise in your blood sugar levels. So that's the same thing that I've just done here. This bread was frozen. It's thawed out now. I'm surprised because I've just had it out for about 30 minutes. So it's quickly thawed out. So that's what you need to do. Truth be told, I don't eat a lot of bread, but when I do, this is a trick that I employ. And of course, there are other types of bread that you can consume safely as well, which I will talk about in some other video. So the message in this video is that for you to eat your bread in a much more blood sugar friendly way is freeze your bread first of all, defrost it. If you don't like to toast it, you can eat it after defrosting it, but better still, toast it after defrosting it. That way you're going to get a better blood sugar response when you consume your bread. So this is a very simple hack that you can employ in your lives if you're somebody who loves bread, and it applies to everybody. You know, even if you're not diabetic, you should employ this trick to make sure that when you consume your bread, you don't encourage blood sugar spikes. So simple as it is, go ahead, employ it, use it every day or anytime you eat your bread, and you should be fine. So hopefully you got some value from this very video. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, please like the video, and also please share this video with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues. If you got any comments, any questions regarding this video presentation, go ahead, leave your comments or questions down below. I think that's about it. Until next time, well, this is Dr. Joe signing out.